A ballerina and a tech entrepreneur met at a political fundraiser and married just 13 days later. It was fast, passionate, and full of promises, but 4 years later, only one of them would walk away alive. This is the story of Ashley and Doug Benefield, known as the Black Swan murder. Welcome back to Chilling Fireside Stories, where I tell true crime stories with the utmost care and respect for the victims and bearable for my community. Now, settle in and let's begin. Today's case begins with a man who, by all accounts, was extraordinary. Doug Benefield wasn't just intriguing, he was deeply respected. A devoted man of faith, a visionary thinker, a loving father, and a loyal friend. He grew up in Huntsville, Alabama, where he made a name for himself as a champion wrestler during his junior and senior years of high school. After graduation, Doug attended Texas A&M University in College Station, Texas, and soon after, he joined the Navy. He completed Aviation Officer Candidate School and went on to serve as a naval flight officer and pilot aboard an S-3B Viking aircraft. For nearly 3 years, he flew missions off Navy aircraft carriers stationed out of San Diego. Later, he became a mine warfare instructor in Charleston, South Carolina, a city he would eventually call home. Doug transitioned into Navy intelligence and retired in 1999 with the rank of lieutenant commander. After leaving the military, Doug explored a wide range of business ventures in Charleston. He also worked as a security and communication technology consultant for the U.S. government. But it was during those early Charleston years that Doug met the woman who would become the love of his life, Renee Kozo Benefield. Renee had been married before and brought 2 sons into the marriage. He and Renee lived just outside Charleston, in the quiet town of Mount Pleasant, and in 2001, Renee and Doug welcomed their daughter Eva. Eva grew up looking just like her mother, both stunning with beautiful blonde hair. They were the kind of family people admired. But in August of 2016, everything changed. On December 2, 2015, while Doug was away on a work trip, his 15-year-old daughter Eva came home to a devastating scene. She found her mother Renee lying face down on the bed, unresponsive. Renee had died suddenly from an undiagnosed heart condition. The trauma Eva has endured is unimaginable, as no child should ever have to carry that memory. In the aftermath, Doug and Eva leaned on each other. Their bond had always been strong, but now it deepened. Doug stepped into the role of single father with quiet determination, all while continuing his work in defense and private equity ventures supporting government missions. Doug assured Eva that his focus will always be on her, that he wasn't interested in dating, let alone remarrying. But fate had other plans. Only 9 months later, in August 2016, Doug attended a political fundraiser at Ben Carson's Palm Beach home. It was there, in the breezy backyard of a presidential campaign winding down, that he met Ashley Benefield. Ashley didn't know anything about Doug's past. She didn't know about Renee, or Eva, or the grief he carried. What she saw was a man who exuded charm, salt and pepper hair, a confident presence, and the kind of maturity that drew her in instantly. At 54, Doug was in shape, well-dressed, and successful, and it was obvious that Ashley was smitten. Ashley herself was striking too. Just 24 years old, she radiated youth and beauty, bright blue eyes, glossy brown hair, and the kind of effortless elegance that turned heads. Ashley had been born in Texas but raised in Maryland by her mother. From a young age, ballet was her world. She trained relentlessly, dancing with professional companies up and down the East Coast. But ballet is a brutal industry, competitive and unforgiving, and Ashley, standing at 5 feet 9 inches, was considered too tall by many companies that demanded a specific look. So, after nearly 6 years of dancing professionally, Ashley retired at the end of the 2014 to 2015 season. She shifted her focus to modeling and settled in Sarasota, Florida, where she lived with her mother. And now, her path had crossed with Doug's. 2 lives, one marked by loss, the other by reinvention, colliding in a moment that would change everything. Ashley loved Florida, but even more than the beaches, she loved politics. According to state records, she'd been a registered Republican since the age of 21, and by 2016, she was fully immersed in the political scene. That's how she ended up at Ben Carson's Palm Beach home, attending a Republican fundraiser. But Ashley wasn't just a guest, she was part of the action. She'd been working on Donald Trump's 2016 campaign, traveling for rallies and managing operations in the Florida office. In fact, she served as the director of the Women for Trump initiative in the state. But there's one detail that's hard to ignore. Ashley kept journals, and in them, she wrote about her interactions with Donald Trump. According to her entries, he complimented her looks, called her a bombshell, and even referred to her as his little girl and his baby. She claimed he promised her a job at the White House and asked for a big fat kiss. But when Trump was later shown a photo of the two of them together at a campaign event, he reportedly said, "I have no idea who that person is." Doug, on the other hand, had his own political connections. He was friendly with some of Ben Carson's major donors, which is how he ended up at that same Palm Beach event. And that's where their paths crossed for the first time. Despite the 30-year age gap, they connected instantly. They met on August 25, 2016, and by the very next day, their phones were lighting up with constant texts. Ashley was already calling Doug my dear and thanking God for bringing him into her life. The flirtation escalated quickly, and by August 27th, Doug was on a week-long work trip to Israel, but the distance didn't slow them down. They texted non-stop, every single day. Then, on September 1st, just 6 days after meeting, they were already saying "I love you." And when Doug returned from his trip, they made a decision that shocked everyone. They were getting married. But this wasn't a long engagement or a slow build toward a future together. They tied the knot just 5 days later, on September 6th, at St. Michael's Church in Charleston. There were no guests, just a witness and Doug's friend Tripp, who officiated the ceremony. Just 13 days after they first met. And what made this marriage even more unusual was the fact that Doug didn't tell anyone. Not his friends, not his family, and most painfully, not his daughter Eva. And of course for Eva, it was devastating. Not only had her father broken the promise to prioritize her, but he hadn't even told her about the wedding. Tripp later admitted he was confused by the whole thing but wanted to support his friend. On September 6th, Ashley officially became Mrs. Benefield. This wasn't her first marriage, though details about her previous relationship remain unclear. She was only 24 when she married Doug, so it's likely that first union was brief. But for Eva, the timing couldn't have been worse. She was still grieving her mother, still trying to make sense of the loss, and now, her father had remarried without her knowledge and was introducing a woman only 9 years older than her as her new mother figure. Eva expressed her experience online.
Okay, listen up, guys. I know all you little sewer rats want a story time, so I'm going to give it to you. I even pulled up my chair. And so, first of all, for this comment, short answer, yes. Long answer, no. Okay, so when I was 15, my mom died of an underlying heart condition. And then, so basically my dad was out of town, and then I came home from school and I found her. So that was the start of a lot of trauma. And then after that, my dad came home and he specifically told me, "Don't worry, Eva, I'm never going to get married again." Well, he didn't use those exact words, but that's how I remember it. And then after that, 9 months later, he married. He was like, it was a Friday after school, and he married. It was a Friday after school, and he was like, "So I'm seeing this girl." And I was like, "Okay." And then he picked her up from the airport the next day, and I met her, and he was like, "She's super cool. She's a model and a ballerina." And I was like, "Okay, like, cool. She's kind of hot, but I don't see the hype. She's 23, dude. Like, come on." But then I was like, "All right, well, you're allowed to date. Like, you're a single man. I get it." And then the next day he was like, "We need to have a family meeting." And I was like, "No, because we're not a family. And the only thing that you should have to tell me is if you propose." And as soon as those words came out of my mouth, he goes, "We're married." And I was like, "What?" So I drove myself, even though I only had my permit. If you're a cop, please don't arrest me. This was years ago. I only had my permit, and I drove myself to my best friend's house. And I was like, "Guys, my dad's actually married to this little skank." And they were like, "What?" And then I was like, "Yeah." And I have 2 older, like, half brothers. They're on my mom's side, though. And I told them, and they're like, "She's younger than us." And I was like, "I know." And so then after that, I just kind of like tried to get used to her, but she was like totally not that nice. She was cool at first, but then she wasn't. Then I tried to get used to her because I was like, okay, well, like, this is reality. He's married. And so then at first she was nice, and then she kind of would like twist my words and make my dad get mad at me. Keep in mind, me and my dad were like very close. Like since my mom died, me and my dad were always close. I was always like me and my dad were just best friends. I was close with my mom too, but like me and my dad like had a different level kind of bond. And so when she did this, it really like affected me and my dad's friendship / father-daughter relationship.
In those early days of the marriage, things appeared calm on the surface. Ashley moved into Doug and Eva's home in Mount Pleasant, and for a brief moment, it looked like they were happy. But that peace wouldn't last, and Doug and Ashley's honeymoon phase was already beginning to unravel. Less than a year into their marriage, the cracks started to show. Their relationship became a cycle of fighting, making up then fighting again. One of the more explosive arguments began when Ashley found Eva's diary and read it. It was a complete violation of privacy, and of course, the diary contained Eva's honest thoughts about how she felt toward her dad's new wife. Ashley was furious, and the fight escalated, and Doug, in a moment of rage, fired a gun into the ceiling. It was terrifying, but just 2 days later, they held a second wedding ceremony, this time with friends and family. It was a strange contrast, a snapshot of how hot and cold things were between them. One moment explosive, the next dressed in formal wear, smiling for photos, and somehow, through all of this, the promise of their future kept growing. Ashley had always dreamed of starting her own ballet company. As a former ballerina, she'd seen firsthand how exclusion and discrimination shaped the dance world, how dancers who were too tall or too short, or didn't fit a certain mold were often cast aside, and she wanted to change that. She envisioned a company that welcomed dancers from all backgrounds, one that gave everyone a chance to shine. And Doug, ever the entrepreneur, wanted to help her make it happen, even though he knew absolutely nothing about ballet. Together, they launched the American National Ballet Company. Dancers from around the world auditioned, and those who were accepted were promised the world: health insurance, competitive pay, American visas for international performers, and even luxury housing with a rehearsal studio built just for them. It sounded like a dream, but just before the dancers arrived, everything changed. Ashley became pregnant and stepped back from the company. For Eva, the news was shocking. She'd always believed her father had a vasectomy, and he had, but he'd secretly had it reversed so he and Ashley could have a child together, and while that decision was personal, it had ripple effects because Ashley, the face of the company, was now bedridden with a difficult pregnancy, and the dancers who had uprooted their lives to join A&B had no idea what was happening behind the scenes. Doug tried to keep things afloat. He put on a brave face, told everyone things were fine, that the company was still on track, but he didn't know ballet. He didn't know the industry, and soon, the dancers began to see the truth. They weren't getting paid, the promises weren't being kept, and the dream they'd signed up for was falling apart. The tension between Ashley and Doug had escalated into something deeply unsettling, and eventually, Ashley began accusing Doug of something unthinkable, claiming he had poisoned his late wife Renee. Renee, as we know, had died from an underlying heart condition, and the autopsy confirmed that. But Ashley insisted otherwise, planting seeds of doubt that had no basis in truth. Everything came to a head on September 17th, when Doug returned home to find a letter. Ashley had packed up her things, driven 500 miles with her mother from Florida to South Carolina, and left Doug. She said she was taking their unborn daughter with her. The timing couldn't have been more chaotic. It was the same day the American National Ballet was supposed to officially launch. In the letter, Ashley laid out her reasons for leaving, accusing Doug of being manipulative, controlling, and dangerous. She wrote, "Even since finding out I was pregnant, you have continued to display psychotic, irrational, and unsafe behavior that has left me fearful for my life as well as that of my unborn child." She warned him not to follow her, not to call, and said she would only communicate via text starting Tuesday. If he tried to reach out, she threatened to involve the police. Eva remembers how devastated her father was. Despite everything, Doug still loved Ashley. He wanted to make it work, but Ashley wasn't done. While living in Florida, she contacted Child Protective Services and claimed Doug was an unfit father to Eva. Her reasoning was that Doug traveled for work and left Eva at home, but Eva was 16 or even 17 at the time, and it wasn't unusual for her to spend a night or two alone. She was fine with it. CPS investigated and found no signs of neglect. Doug was cleared, but the emotional toll was heavy, for both Doug and Eva. And all the while, Doug was still trying to keep the ballet company afloat. The dancers began to realize that the promises they'd been given weren't being kept. There was no structure, no leadership, and Doug, who knew nothing about ballet, was now running the show alone. To keep the dancers from leaving, he started paying them out of his own pocket. By mid-October 2017, the company announced that Ashley was stepping down, but insiders knew the truth, that Doug had removed her. The business was crumbling and Doug was grasping at straws. On October 23rd, he called in half the dancers and asked them to sign NDAs, claiming they were about to hear exciting news. But the reality was completely different. They were being fired. The NDAs were meant to silence them, but still it made headlines. It was a scandal, and Ashley publicly distanced herself from the company, saying she had nothing to do with what happened, and that seemed to be the turning point. Ashley went full force with her accusations. She repeated the claim that Doug had poisoned Renee, and now she said he was poisoning her. She went to the police and asked them to test the tea bags Doug had given her for her birthday, convinced they were laced with something harmful, but the tests came back clean. She even submitted strands of her hair for lab testing, but again nothing suggested poisoning. But Ashley remained convinced she was being targeted. Eventually, she went to Tampa General Hospital, telling doctors she'd been exposed to heavy metals. They responded by performing an emergency C-section, and Ashley Benefield was born 3 weeks early on March 2018. Doug wasn't notified as he wasn't listed on the birth certificate. Ashley had convinced the hospital she was being abused, and they admitted her under a fake name. Even though Ashley's daughter was born healthy, she continued taking her to the hospital, convinced the baby was suffering from heavy metal poisoning. At one point, they spent over 40 hours inside a detox chamber designed for people exposed to toxic metals. And when Doug found out what was happening, he'd had enough. In the summer of 2018, he took Ashley to court, hoping to gain custody, or at the very least, partial custody of their daughter. Ashley tried to paint Doug as an unfit parent, but the judge didn't buy it. Doug was granted partial custody. Surprisingly, Ashley didn't fight the ruling. In fact, she cooperated, making sure Doug had access to their daughter, and then, in a twist no one saw coming, the two of them began to repair their relationship. Doug even moved into an apartment complex in Florida to be closer to Ashley and the baby. He believed they were rebuilding, starting fresh. But that illusion shattered when Doug noticed Ashley wearing an engagement ring, but it wasn't the one he'd given her. So Doug hired a private investigator, who discovered that Ashley was seeing someone else. The ring had come from another man, and at that time, Doug and Ashley were still legally married. Doug reached his breaking point and filed for divorce. But as the legal process began, Ashley responded with a devastating new allegation, accusing Doug of sexually abusing their daughter. It was a dramatic escalation that shifted the tone of the custody battle entirely, and just like before, the claims were baseless. No evidence, no history, nothing to support the accusation. Doug was stunned and even wrote Ashley an email suggesting she might be suffering from a split personality disorder. But then, in mid-2020, Doug shocked his friends and family by announcing that he and Ashley were going to try again. They planned to move to Maryland for a fresh start, to be a family. It seemed like just what they needed, a fresh start together. And over the next few months, that became the plan. But not everyone was convinced it was a good idea. It's also hard to imagine what Eva must have felt hearing that, but from what she shared online, she had the support of other family members during that time. She had just turned 18 and moved into her own place. Doug continued to support her financially, which, after everything, was the least he could do. That support would prove crucial because in September of 2020, the unthinkable happened. On the night of September 27th, Doug and Ashley were packing up his place, loading the last of their belongings into a U-Haul truck. Ashley's mother had taken their daughter out for a late-night walk in her stroller. Inside, Doug was finishing up, just one last box to load into the U-Haul. They were hours away from leaving Charleston behind and starting fresh in Maryland. But then, out of the quiet night, a piercing scream shattered the silence. A neighbor heard the scream and immediately called 911. Moments later, another neighbor was startled by frantic banging at their door. When they opened it, Ashley was standing there, holding a gun.
In line. This is Gabby. How can I help you? Hey, Gabby, it's Karen. On 11327, I have John Singer on the phone. He's saying the neighbor came over, female neighbor. It was a domestic. She shot her husband.
Okay. Alrighty, I'm going to get that on the screen, okay?
Okay.
What screen is this her at?
The 11327 White Rock Terrace.
Okay.
That's my address.
That's your address? What's her address? Where this occurred at?
Her address is right next to her. I believe it's 11331.
She's on the corner?
Okay.
Yes, ma'am, on the corner. She's with me now, quite upset. The weapon is here. We need the police before her mother, and the little girl gets back from the park. I don't want them to find this.
Yeah.
You want me to go over and look at anything, or just wait for the police?
No, I want you to just wait for the police, okay?
All right, if you could just get them here quick.
Gabby, you want to let us know if we need EMS?
Yes, we will.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so they were in an argument?
I don't know. She came in. She was quite hysterical. I didn't know who was banging on my door. Said that he attacked her, and she shot him. They've been having trouble.
Okay. I'm just getting that all on the screen, okay?
Okay. I know, honey. Come on, calm down. I know.
Okay,
it's not what people think. It's not what people think it is. I know.
Yeah.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Where is the gun? Is it with her, or is it just...
I have it right here, ma'am. It's sitting on the floor inside the door. My door's locked, so in case he isn't, he can't get up. I'm also armed if he does come over and try to harm her, just so everybody knows.
Okay.
I'm kind of concerned with her mother and the little girl might get back there and find this, whatever happened.
The deputies are running as fast as they can, okay?
Okay. Don't go out there, honey. Come on. I know. I've seen it before. It's no different in combat. Come on, honey. Sit down. I know.
Yeah. All right, I just want you guys to stay on the phone with me, okay?
Yeah, I'm right here with you. I'm just with her. I'm trying to comfort her, explaining it isn't what people think it is when it happens.
Yeah. I'm sure she's pretty shaken up as well, okay?
I hope so. I've been worried about them for so long.
Okay. Have they been having issues recently?
Beg your pardon?
They've been having issues recently?
I'm not too sure how long. I'm not sure. Where in the house is he? Well, the police are going to want to know, probably. I know, baby. You got to sit down. Come on. There's no... Well, honey, they want you to stay here. If he isn't, we can't take a chance. That's why I want them to hurry up before they get back from the park.
Deputies are moving as fast as their hand. They're coming priority. They're coming lights and sirens. They just want to get and make sure that everything's okay. So where in the house is he?
Where in the house is he?
My bedroom.
Her bedroom. No, I don't know where that is.
Paramedics rushed to the scene. Doug was still alive when they arrived, but his injuries were severe. He'd been shot twice, once in the leg and once in the arm. That second bullet had traveled into his chest cavity, and tragically it was a fatal wound, and as a result Doug died within the hour. The next morning, Eva woke up with a sense that something was wrong. Her father always sent her a Bible verse each morning. It was their ritual, but that day, there was no message until her uncle called and told her what had happened, and Eva, without hesitation, said, "She killed him, didn't she?" 5 weeks later, the death of Doug Benefield was officially ruled intentional. It was not self-defense, but because Ashley claimed Doug had attacked her, she wasn't arrested that night. She wasn't even heavily questioned. Her mother backed up her story, saying Ashley had lived in fear of Doug for years, but the authorities weren't convinced. According to court documents, investigators obtained a search warrant for the residence. During its execution, they discovered that 4 shots had been fired. 4 .45 caliber shell casings were found on the floor of Ashley's bedroom. A loose projectile was recovered nearby, and 2 more were embedded in the walls. Ashley was transported to CID for questioning, but her legal counsel had already arrived. She declined to make a formal statement, though she did spontaneously mention that her ears were still ringing. As she walked to the interview room, officers noted that Ashley showed no visible injuries, no torn clothing, no signs of a struggle. A minor scratch was visible on her right side, but it appeared old. A witness later confirmed that Ashley had been accidentally scratched the day before the shooting when someone walked past her carrying a box. Doug had been shot twice. One bullet entered and exited his right leg. The other grazed his bicep and entered his chest cavity from the right side. There were no signs of close-range firing, no stippling on his skin or clothing, indicating the shots were fired from several feet away. Based on the entry wounds, it appeared Doug was not facing Ashley when the shooting began. There was no evidence that he had taken a defensive or combative stance. After being shot, Doug fell to the ground and likely struck his head. He had an abrasion on the back of his skull that matched a patch of disturbed drywall nearby. No weapons were found on or near Doug. Ashley claimed that during the confrontation, Doug raised his right hand and drove his knuckles into the left side of her head. The impact caused sharp, numbing pain and made her stumble. She later stated that the blow left visible bruises on her face, injuries that were photographed at the police station as part of the investigation. Ashley was arrested and charged in November 2020, but she was later released on bail. Florida is a stand-your-ground state, and Ashley claimed she acted in self-defense. Under the law, a person has the right to use deadly force if they reasonably believe it's necessary to prevent imminent death, serious harm, or a forcible felony. So, could Ashley have truly believed she was in danger? And then there's the question of motive. Financial gain seems unlikely as Doug's life insurance policy had expired just months before his death. He had forgotten to renew it and there was no payout. In February 2023, Ashley Benefield's legal team filed a motion to dismiss the charges and request immunity under Florida's Stand Your Ground law. The filing painted a disturbing portrait of her marriage to Doug Benefield, whom she had wed after just 13 days in 2016. According to Ashley, Doug had misrepresented himself from the start, portraying a dream partner while concealing a darker, more volatile side. The motion detailed a series of alleged incidents: Doug firing a gun into the ceiling to intimidate her, throwing a loaded firearm, punching their dog unconscious, placing a tracker on her car, and being caught peering into her home at night. Ashley's attorneys argued she was physically outmatched. Doug was a former naval officer, trained in combat and in peak condition. He had allegedly warned her, "You haven't seen the warrior side of me, and you never want to." In the weeks leading up to the shooting, Ashley and her mother and daughter were preparing to move to Maryland. Doug had leased a separate apartment and according to Ashley, they had agreed not to live together. But on moving day, tensions escalated. Doug reportedly grew angry when Ashley insisted her belongings be packed last, since they were headed to a different address. He allegedly accused her of dividing the family and threatened to pack her in the pod, a phrase he'd used before to describe a slow, miserable trip as punishment. Ashley claimed Doug's behavior turned increasingly aggressive. While she was bent over packing in the garage, he hovered over her, fists clenched.
Tell us about it.
We were in the living room, and as he came up to me, instead of walking past me, he walked right into me, like a body check. He bumped me.
His shoulder to your shoulder?
Yes.
And describe for us, if you can, the force of the bump.
It caught me off guard. I almost fell. I stumbled.
How was he acting at that point?
He was clearly hostile. He was mumbling under his breath and was glaring at me.
What was your concern?
I could see that it was escalating, and I didn't want him to blow up at me. It's a picture of my face.
Is it an accurate picture of what your face looked like on that night?
Yes, sir.
Who took that photograph?
I don't remember her name. She was at the sheriff's office.
At the sheriff's office? Okay. Now, what is it about that photograph that shows or reflects the slap or the hit that you got to the side of your head on that day by Doug?
That side of my face is swollen and puffy and discolored around my eye.
And is your eyelid drooping?
Yes.
On the side where you were hit?
Yes.
What was different at that moment, Ashley, than at any time in your prior relationship with Doug?
He had never actually hit me before.
What did you do?
I ran.
Where?
To my room.
Why?
I was scared.
Ashley, did you have anything in your room that could protect you?
I had my gun.
Did you grab the gun?
Yes.
As you're grabbing the gun, what, if anything, did you hear?
I heard the door hitting the doorstop.
As if it is flung open?
Yes.
And what do you see, Ashley, when you look up?
Doug was standing in the doorway. His face was red. Like the veins were bulging in his neck. The way he was looking at me didn't even look like Doug. His eyes were black.
Does he yell anything at you?
He said, "You're done."
What does he do at that point?
I held the gun like in front of me, and I said, "Stop." And he like turned and he got into this like, it was like a fighting stance. He like, I got low and he started like moving his arms and his hands around. And he was making these like jerking motions.
What were you expecting when you were holding the gun out in front of you and you told him to stop?
I thought when he saw it, he would leave.
Did he?
No.
At that point, Ashley, what are you thinking?
I thought he was gonna kill me.
Tell us what happens next.
He started coming towards me, and then he lunged at me, and I started pulling the trigger. And he just kept coming. And I remember trying to move to get away from him, but he kept coming at me.
Ashley, would you tell us why, if you're holding a loaded firearm, you were attempting to move away?
I was trying to get away from him. I was terrified.
All right, so you're firing. He keeps advancing. What happens next?
It was like his feet slipped out from under him and his legs went up in the air.
When Doug hits the floor, what's your immediate reaction?
I ran to get home.
Can you tell us how many shots you fired?
I have no idea. I was in a panic.
Critics argued Ashley fabricated the abuse to eliminate Doug as a threat, especially since the shooting happened just 3 days before a custody hearing that would reveal psychological evaluations of both parents. Doug's attorney called the timing no coincidence. Doug's family believed he was trying to reconcile. They said he had packed a U-Haul with Ashley's belongings and was picking up the last box when he was shot. Doug's older daughter, Ava, shared raw and personal reflections on her social media. Her posts offered a rare glimpse into her grief, her truth, and the emotional toll this tragedy has taken.
I was scrolling on, I was just scrolling, you know, as one does, and I saw this one post, and it was like, when you get a Hinge notification from a man that says dinner reservations at 6, and then 3 months later you're married walking in Home Depot. And all the comments were like, "Man, that's a stranger. Like, I would never marry somebody in 3 months. That's crazy. You don't know him." My dad and the lady that ended up killing him, Ashley, got married after 13 days of knowing each other. So that should have been the red flag from the start.
Ashley was released on bond and returned to live with her mother and young daughter as she awaited trial in Manatee County. With court proceedings dragging on and no trial date in sight, the case remained in limbo, leaving Doug's family trapped in a painful holding pattern, still waiting for justice, still searching for closure.
There's not really a whole update other than they set the date for the actual trial, which is so sick. But I'm like not gonna do well because the hearing, it was 1 day last year, and within that day I saw my dad's autopsy pictures unwarranted, which was so cool, and I actually went to therapy for the first time ever after that. But regardless of that, it will be happening in July. Ashley filed something, a ghostwriter, because I'm writing a memoir, if y'all didn't know, and my ghostwriter keeps up with all like the dockets and stuff, and that Ashley had filed to go to, she's on house arrest for everybody that doesn't know, for almost 4 years later after murdering somebody, you can still be on house arrest. Shocker. But she filed with the court to see if she could stay out until 2 a.m. so she could take her daughter to Disney on her birthday, which I think is today. So watch out, Disney goers. If you're in Disney World today, there's probably a murderer walking fucking loose.
After more than 3 years of legal delays, media speculation, and emotional turmoil, Ashley Benefield's trial finally began in March 2024 at the Manatee County Courthouse in Bradenton, Florida. It had been almost 4 years since the day she shot and killed her husband, Doug Benefield, in September 2020. From the very first day, the tension inside the courtroom was unbearable. Ashley, once a graceful ballerina and dance entrepreneur, now sat quietly behind the defense table. Across from her sat Doug's family. The prosecution argued that this was not a case of self-defense. They claimed Ashley lured Doug to her Lakewood Ranch home under the pretense of reconciliation, and that she shot him intentionally during a heated argument. Prosecutors described Doug as unarmed, saying he posed no immediate threat when Ashley pulled the trigger. They painted her as a woman consumed by jealousy, resentment, and fear of losing control. But the defense painted a very different picture. They told the jury that Ashley had lived in constant terror, that Doug had become emotionally and physically abusive during their short but turbulent marriage. They presented text messages, journal entries, and testimony that portrayed Ashley as a woman desperate to escape. According to her lawyers, when Doug entered her home that night, she believed he was there to kill her. The verdict was finally read on March 14, 2024.
We are following those new developments out of Manatee County, Florida, where Ashley Benefield, former ballerina, sentenced to 20 years for the shooting and killing of her estranged husband, Doug.
After the sentencing, her Doug's cousin, Tommy Benefield, if you remember back during the trial, he was very vocal during the trial. He was there a lot. And then Eva Benefield, Doug's daughter, she testified at trial and then also had a very moving victim impact statement today. They got in front of the cameras afterwards and reacted.
So we believe that it was fair. We know that the second-degree murder was not a guilty verdict, that manslaughter with a firearm was. That was below the minimum of 25, but still took into account Doug's killing by her.
Is there anything you want people to know? My dad was the best man that I've ever known in my entire life, and he will continue to hold that in my mind and in our family's mind forever. I'm really content with the sentencing, the verdict, and you know, I think that I waited so long to be able to speak to her face to face, and I finally got that for myself personally, so I hope prison serves her well.
So even today, they're trying to say that Doug was facing Ashley when she shot him. And that's just been the lie throughout this entire thing. When the bullet comes through your body and lodges in your back from the side, that is not from the front. That's not attacking someone. That's turning to run from someone pointing a gun at you. We talked about the unsophisticated or sophisticated part of this. She was sophisticated. She had a gun loaded in the bedroom, a gun loaded in the kitchen, and her carry weapon right there in front of him. Doug had no idea there was another gun in that room to be shot with. Don't believe it was unsophisticated. This was planned, it was sophisticated, and that came out in court with a sentence today. Thank y'all so much. Alicia, Ashley's mother, has guardianship currently of Emerson. We have not felt it appropriate to step into that at all until after the sentencing and see where we are next. But we know from the time that Emerson spent walking around that courtyard that almost everyone saw that as abuse by letting a 6-year-old do it. That certainly needs to be looked at by the state.
The murder of Doug Benefield isn't just a story about a failed marriage. It's a story about how love can turn into obsession and how behind even the most beautiful smiles, there can be darkness waiting to break through. Thank you for watching today's tragic case. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe for more haunting true crime stories from around the world. And until my next video, stay safe. And remember, Sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who seem the most charming.